Good evening, everyone. Just a tiny technical difficulty right off the jump, but it ain't nothing I can't handle. Getting the video to start playing, and we're probably going to experience that same thing where if you don't put the video into the actual web browser, it ain't going to play. And this totally worked the last time, and now it's just trying to act like it's a download. So don't know if that's totally going to work. And then we'll see here in 1 second, though. I'll just share the actual screen that is the actual movie.mov. And that's probably honestly why it doesn't want to work, because it's just weird. But here we go. Let's get this thing going. And pray the audio comes through, because otherwise it's going to be kind of weird without the audio. Reflections, obsessions, I have no faith, and darkness comes, but I'm safe and sound. A path lies ahead, and a king will be crowned. Can I find a way to stay strong? I haven't felt so alive in so long. That's the way you answer. Burn the page and let the prologue begin. Can I find a way to stay strong? I haven't felt so alive in so long. That's the way you answer. Burn the page and let the prologue begin. I don't know who said it first. Somebody once said, as long as a wide angle lens. Every single thing is choice. There is only one way that we triumph over psychopathy, sociopathy, and narcissism. We have the technology to determine whether or not someone's prefrontal cortex, the frontal lobe, experiences neuroelectrical stimulus. Somebody who is clinically psychopathic, sociopathic, or narcissistic does not experience neurons and dendrites sending electrochemical signals between one another. This is what every single one of us human beings is now faced with. The political spectrum, the entertainment spectrum of the world, big technology. There are a lot of things being done to the human race that, from a 10,000-foot view, appear devoid of care. When you care for somebody, you put yourself second, and you put the other person first. The majority of the politicians, the bureaucrats, the TV generals do not care for other people about any of us. Their agenda has proven so. So if that is their modus operandi, then there is only one way to overcome their influence, by embodying the opposite of the character traits and the mental defects they embody. They embody sociopathy, psychopathy, and narcissism. We then must embody altruism, selflessness, and compassion with care. It is truly the only way to defeat the deep state. In case I forgot to mention it, the present moment is all that exists. It just is, as I am, that I am. Thou art, and we are one. Namaste. Satori. So welcome to Alive and Thriving. I think this is the 5th one now, so super stoked to be hosting everyone that's here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a spiritual war, and I know that I'm preaching to the choir. That being said, if we don't know where we've come from, if we don't understand our history, we're doomed to repeat it. We are going through this massive awakening
And I have never, like, I remember writing in a notebook my first semester at Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado, studying contemplative psychology, saying, I want to track the like leading edge of the Great Awakening and having that be my business, after graduating college. I never thought that the awakening would catch as fast as I see it catching now. And it's all thanks to everything that we're experiencing political. Again, I know that I'm preaching to the choir. So that being said, I didn't. There are people that are waking up now that I was like, you're a lost cause like a year ago or 2 years ago. And one of those individuals was the pastor of my old church. His name is Jim. And I loved listening to him preach, but I completely fell out of love with religion when I started my personal awakening journey. But that being said, I got this tattoo here on my arm with my brother, and it's the thin red line. It's the red band of Christ. And this was something that was initiated by Pastor Jim at Flatirons Church. And the entire purpose is to be a good man in Christ for God, for humanity, for your family. If you're a father, be a good leader for your family. If you're a brother, be a good brother. If you're a community figurehead, be the most upstanding possible community figurehead that you can be. We see the ramifications, and we're going to see more tonight, of the world that we're living in being the result of men not honoring their vows. So if you're a man, I implore you, if you're already doing it, which I suspect you are, especially the Rumble crowd, I suspect that you are already a good man. And if you're a woman, then I implore you to embody that divine mother principle and be as loving as you possibly can be, and be as supportive as you possibly can be of your men going into this next year and a half, because it's going to be extremely trying. Let's check out a clip right here from good old DBG, Dan Bongino. And I'll make sure to share this screen once I get this loaded. So let's go to the edited version here. I gotta start from the beginning. Present that over to you. So, how's everybody's week been? I hope that it's been well. Know that you are that which you are. So, where are we at here? We are on StreamYard Media. Yeah, all right. Now let's zoom and enhance. Zoom and enhance. All right.
I woke up this morning, especially fired up. I got up at like 3:30. EMAs, early morning awakenings. They're never good things. You know what they're a sign of? You can look it up. They're typically a sign of some form of depression. What, are you depressed? A little bit. A little bit. Why are you sharing this with us? I don't know, because I'm just a freaking savage at heart. I have no idea. I don't know, man. Lately, like what's going on with this place is like really stung. And none of it's new. The inflation's not new. The border crisis isn't new. Fentanyl, the economic problems, China, Russia, none of it's new. It's just really, I don't know, like with you guys, it's like ripping my heart out lately. So I woke up this morning really early, like 3:30. I couldn't fall back asleep. Someone said yesterday, took a picture of me because I burned my face on the thing in the sauna. Like, what's up with Dan Bongino? The answer is nothing's up with Dan Bongino. Something's up with the country that's affecting Dan Bongino.
Something's up with the country that's affecting Dan Bongino. Have you been experiencing EMAs, early morning awakenings? Because God knows I have. I've been waking up consistently for the past like year, 2 years. It probably is going on 3 years. At like 1:45, 2:15 in the morning. My body's like, bro, we got to get up. We got to do something. And like, I'll be honest with you, the days that I get up and I just get going are the best days. They're the days that I feel the best, that I get the most done. But it's brought on by anxiety. It's brought on by stress. And it's because we are collectively going through this bottleneck that we are like caterpillars becoming butterflies right now. Again, I understand that I'm fully preaching to the choir here, but hopefully you hear something like this, you know you're not alone. You know that there are people going through it as equally as much as you are. And if you're not going through it, you're like, I'm trying to understand like what some of my family members or my friends have been talking about for quite a while now, then this is a guy right here, Dan Bongino, has been at the forefront of this war for a long time. He served under Obama in the Secret Service, and he left the Secret Service. He left institutionalized law enforcement because of not having a voice, because he could do more good in the content creation media space. He could gather a bigger audience and create bigger change that way. I have never seen so much content being created as right now. And I started creating content as soon as I got out of the Marine Corps back in 2014. And then I completely stopped. And I had imposter syndrome, and I was like, I can't do it. Like, I'm not good enough. Like, who's going to listen anyways? And also, probably the most biggest reason why a lot of patriots have stayed silent is that fear of the knock at the door. We're in a spiritual war. And if you understand what Operation Paperclip is, you understand that the individuals that were possessed by the woke mind virus circa 1930 were imported into the Constitutional Republic of the United States and then given just money, resources, and access to do whatever it is they wanted to do. In a nutshell. And if you're tracking the loan that came from Europe, namely the Crown Bank of London and the Vatican, to repay debts from the Civil War, and I put repay in air quotes because the United States at the time, at the end of the Civil War, the North, the Union, was becoming a regional economic, force. We didn't need loans from Europe. We didn't need loans from the Crown Bank of London or from the Vatican. Nonetheless, they came. And then the school of thought around that is through that money, through that transaction, the Constitutional Republic of the United States was usurped and ceased being, as the founding fathers put it in place, meaning that the sovereignty that the founding fathers rightfully identified by studying nature and spirituality, they structured a document that said, nature's God, we the people, Constitution, we get our sovereignty, the individual gets its sovereignty from God, and then the individual says, I'm going to go and I'm going to do me, and I'm going to take my sovereignty with me everywhere I go. I am sovereign. That cannot be undone. Nonetheless, I'm going to go be a farmer. I'm going to be a carpenter, this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to raise a family. Therefore, I'm going to structure all of these truths into a document, and then I'm going to charge the quote-unquote government with making sure that these rights are never tampered with. Then you get to 1876, into the Civil War. We're taking loans from Europe, and in that transaction, somewhere in the fine print, the devil is in the details, our sovereignty gets taken away. But you can't take it away because this is a spiritual universe. This is a spiritual world. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And this is where you get into this dichotomy of Jesus telling people to turn the other cheek. Now, we're going to go into that more in the future. But what happens if somebody strikes you on the right side of your face? Well, Jesus says, well, present the left side. Now, is that just saying Okay, yeah, go ahead and beat me. Not at all. That's not at all what Christ. That's not the wisdom he was imparting there. What he was saying is be the bigger man. Don't engage in the ways of the world. If someone's going to lash out at you with violence, who does that? If we look into nature, we have clear evidence, right? The lion takes down the gazelle. The owl takes down the field mouse. Animals lash out in violence. What was Christ? Christ was a real, capital REAL, real human. Real humans are divine. Christ takes it to the umpteenth level of being the incarnation of unconditional love, of the Christ. Jesus takes it to the next level. Folks, we're in a spiritual war. And the animals that do not have the type of foresight and the vision that Jesus had, they see things in materialistic ways. It's money, it's possessions, it's what we can get for ourselves. They engage in transactions that bury into the fine print the devil, literally, and then on paper take away the sovereignty of the individual. That's at least their train of thought. Then they go the next step further of you're now tax chattel. You will now live inside of an illusion that we're going to propagate through the public education system, through media, through all of the various ways that you get information. This story of the founding of your nation. And we are never going to tell you about 1876. We're never going to tell you about these things that actually affect you. We're going to hide them in plain sight. And not only that, we're going to hide our symbology in plain sight. So that everywhere you look, though you may not realize it, the flag that we've planted on conquered territory is smacking you in the face. 666. Go to any Taco Bell. Now realize that a lot of content creators will say allegedly after pretty much everything, but this stream is brought to you by the First Amendment. And it's supported by the Second. So you corporatocratic ideologue monarch bastards can go beep yourself. I have made peace with the knock at the door. If that's what it comes to, that's what it comes to. I think Christ's life demonstrates that that is exactly what it comes to. Jesus crucified. Trump being persecuted. Brand being persecuted. Why? Because they're calling out the lies. They are calling out the institutions that prop up and maintain the lies. They are pointing out the matrix. Tate. Andrew Tate. This seems to be the way of the world. As a spiritual being having a human experience, it seems as though once you're awake, the forces, the powers, and the principalities, knowing full well, as they are also spiritual beings having human experiences, knowing full well they'll never be able to put you back to sleep, try to do what at that point? Well, Jesus's life perfectly shows us exactly what they try to do at that point. Nail you to a cross. Slander you, libel you, torture you if they can get their hands on you. And all the while, they are creating systems and structures to act as pitfalls for the awake and pitfalls for those who are asleep. Every single thing about the way that they structure their empires their societies lead a spiritual being having a human experience who's ignorant of that fact, coming out the womb, going through the veil of forgetfulness, right? There's a lot of data that says that infants before a certain age remember so much about past lives, about spiritual beings and topics and things from the other side of the veil, right? The other side of that forming in the womb process. But then the veil of forgetfulness takes place once the brain is ready to start engaging with the physical world and moving and being and having its way in the world. There is a ton of data about children all over the world, but the study was done in China, and this was like CCP, yeah, but like in the 60s of children remembering past lives to such levels of detail while blindfolded and giving visual descriptors, right? These are children that are just like still living in mom and dad's house. They've never been outside into the world, but they can describe in vivid detail other geographic locations, the houses that they used to live in, the exact placement of furniture in those houses, even being able to finger, right, quote unquote, identify if they were killed in the past life, their actual murderer. And authorities did actually make arrests based on this data. What's the point? The point is that we are in a spiritual war. And what we see with our eyes, our physical eyes, and the lies that we are told by the physical world and the powers and the principalities and the structures and the institutions and the systems, all of those things are in place to keep you from doing one thing: waking up, understanding that you are a spiritual, at first realizing that you're a spiritual being having a human experience, but then actually doing something about it. So Jesus told Pilate, "You have no power save what God give unto thee." If I said it with one word, I could command an army to invade here. That's a spiritual being with perfect clarity speaking unto the physical world about things they don't understand. And what do we as humans do when we're confronted with things we don't understand? We completely lash out in fear. We reject. We try to destroy. But going through those processes is necessary to get to the point, like doing cold showers in the morning or cold plunges in the ocean in the morning. If you live near the ocean and it's cold, these are masculinity practices for releasing dopamine in a healthy, natural way, taking cold showers in the morning. It also has very beneficial effects for muscle development and cognitive function. Yeah, at first you don't like it, but after a while you're like, this is actually making sense to me in some kind of way. It's making me feel good. It's making me want to go back and do it again. That right there, that going through the pain, that's what this spiritual being having a human experience is about. It's about doing things, repetition, and then being like, I'm good. I now know how to do that thing. Well, the more time that you spend in Satori, which is being awake, paying attention, the more it becomes real clear that you're not the flesh, that you're not the mind, that you're not whatever labels society puts onto you, right? The irony, I say that as I have this behind me, all of these material accomplishments of my life. So you go through all these experiences, you pay attention long enough, and it becomes vividly clear. All right, yep, I'm not this flesh. I'm not the mind. I'm not my pain. I'm not my suffering. I am something more. But along the way, we got to wade through a lot of stuff. And Pastor Jim is going through that process right now. It seems like he's making that transition from being someone whose attention was firmly fixed in the material, in the historical Jesus, in the what's for dinner, to being like, wow, there is something so much larger than everything that I thought before. Now let's check out this next clip. I'm going to be as smooth as I possibly can. Click back here, go on down here. And I've got a lot of clips for you tonight, so if we go 2 hours, I'm perfectly comfortable with that.
One of a kind.
Let's present this. Boom.
Like unique, unlike any other. Like he's in a category all on his own. So what makes Jesus the Son unique is that Jesus is timeless. Jesus wasn't created. Everything and everyone else had a beginning. Wasn't here, and then God created it. Now it's here. But Jesus pre-existed creation with the Father and the Spirit, the Trinity. What makes Jesus unique, unlike any other, right, is that Jesus is God. Jesus is Yahweh in the flesh. He wasn't God embodied like a man. We're going to look at all that next week. Jesus was God incarnate in the flesh as a man. He was a man, and he was God. You got to think about this, okay? If he was a man, Jesus came through Mary's birth canal. That was a rough day, right? Christmas, all right? He was potty trained. You ever thought about Jesus that way, right? He learned to walk. He went through puberty. He was tempted in every way that you and I are tempted. He lived a sinless life. He died as a sacrifice and a payment for our sins. He was buried in a tomb. He rose from the dead. He ascended back to heaven, where he's seated at the right hand of God and has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. There is none like Jesus. He's unique.
He's unique, one of a kind. But did he live a sinless life? Well, I don't know about you, but I don't know how you could possibly be a child, right? And not punch one of your friends. How you could not possibly tick off your mom, tick off your dad, do something to anger someone just by being a kid. What happened in all those years that Jesus, that's not disclosed in the Bible? A lot of stuff happened, a lot of life experiences. Jesus is sitting at the right hand of God. There's no doubt about that. But what if we were to not use the word Jesus? Oh my God, Nate, the blasphemy. Psst. I get it. And just know this. I love Christ. Everything about my identity centers around Christ. But what if we were to not focus on the one word, a single name? Just think about that for a while. What if every time you heard the word Jesus, you heard in your mind Christ? Yes, one and the same. But what if we didn't hear the word Jesus and we heard the word Christ every single time in reference to the life of a historical figure? What type of an effect would that have on your consciousness? What type of an effect would that have had on your upbringing? What if it wasn't focused in on a person, on a name, rather a consciousness? Let's take a look at Pastor Jim. Pastor Jim says something in last Sunday's sermon about false religions. And I know that he's not talking about, well, in my heart, I don't know for certain, what exactly he's saying. But He's going to say false religions, and we're going to unpack that in a second. But I want to share something with you here because it's very intriguing.
Church to spread the good. Why does God need his church to spread the good news of Jesus across the entire earth? And he doesn't need to do that. He could just speak the word and everybody on the planet becomes a Christian. He could just think it, right? But God enjoys working with and through his people, his creation, you and me. And apparently these sons of God that we find gathered around God's throne and working with and for God. They're all through the Bible. I've read the Bible many times, and I've just brushed by this. But time and time throughout the Old Testament, and then cropping up less frequently, but in the New Testament, especially in the book of Revelation, they're all over the place there. We find God, see pictures of God in a throne room. And how many times have you said God has thrones, and there's all these thrones around him? Who are they for? They're for he's sharing his reign. But what?
He's sharing his reign. Now, a throne room. Tons of thrones. Well, got something on earth that predates Christianity, and that is Buddhism. Whoa, Nate. Whoa, whoa, whoa. But look at this image, right? This image was carved. Oh, I gotta press this button. Look at this image. This image was carved into stone. These images were carved into stone. Thousands and thousands of years before Egypt was even an empire. Well, what are the builders trying to tell us here? Well, it seems like what Pastor Jim is talking about was a throne room holding many thrones. Buddhism is full of this. There are temples all over the world that show, well, in my opinion, exactly what Pastor Jim is talking about right here and what the Bible is talking about of these many quote unquote gods, lowercase g gods, the Elohim, lowercase e. But then as we see in this image, one of them is taller than the rest, right? And there's another taller one too down there at the end, but here's kind of saying the exact same thing that Pastor Jim is saying there, right? Mr. Tall Buddha here, all of these other smaller Buddhas. What's the message there? Well, we're going to unpack that as we go along here. Let me close some of these tabs real quick. Got to try to keep a clean presentation floor as we go along. Otherwise, I'll lose what the heck is going on. Got to keep things in order. So, he wants Christians to do something, right? Well, me too. Let's see what he says. Got to present. Yeah, share the screen. StreamYard. All right.
Again, last week I said this: if I could give this whole fall teaching an umbrella title or theme, it would be this: hey, church, wake up. Pay attention to what's really going on, because it really is hidden in plain sight, and it's happening all around you in your real daily life. And Jesus says, once you have eyes that can see what's really going on, you will see that it's not just in plain sight, but it's going on right in your face. The Bible is clear that the closer we move to the coming of Jesus, the spiritual battle is going to intensify more and more. So church, wake up. Look around and pay attention to what's going on in the world, and armor up with the armor of God and go to war in the power of the Spirit, not against one another, but against the spiritual enemy and the reality and the scheme that is driving and working through the people around us.
So I see, and I figured as much, but I see that I've lost. I've lost some viewers, and that's fine. This is, graduate level Christianity. That's what I call this. Now, He's saying, church, wake up. Well, let's go see what he's talking about. Because this right here, I don't think I could have ever been more just happy, right? To hear these words come out of a pastor's mouth.
See if I was safe or not to
United
really talk
States
about what he really wanted to talk
Circuit
about. And
2023.
I guess I passed the test because we jumped in the deep end, all right? Because eventually he began to tell me some of the
So Pastor Jim's going to tell a story here real quick about being on a tour at the Capital of Denver building in downtown Denver. Now the tour guide wants to share some stuff with Pastor Jim, and I think it's pretty intriguing.
darker spiritual encounters that he had experienced around our Capitol building, especially like back when all the protests were happening downtown. Remember that? Well, what we all saw the parades and the rioting on the news, but what the media did not capture was the significant presence of men and women involved in witchcraft and sorcery who were attacking and speaking demonic incantations and curses towards any person or official who opposed the chaos openly, right there in the yard of the Capitol. My friend said all I could do was pray in the name and power of Jesus. And they saw me up there, and they knew what I was doing. And he knew that they were cursing him, targeting him, but they wouldn't come close to him. It was like they couldn't, like something was protecting him. This guy loves Jesus. I mean, he cannot help but talk about Jesus. So then he tells me, here's the weird story that some of you are going to go like, I'm going to have a dream tonight. Thanks, Jim. All right. So he was involved in the military. He was training a special ops soldier. And over time, because he can't help but talk about Jesus, all right, the soldier said, I want to become a Christian. And so my friend began to lead him in a prayer, but when he came to a certain word, the soldier could not physically say the word Jesus. It wouldn't come out. I believe that, like physically couldn't do it. So my friend looks and goes, what's going on? And the soldier says, you don't know what's in me. He said, well, tell me. And some of you have been stationed overseas. You know what I'm about to say. You've seen it. He says, I was in Afghanistan. And we were doing, raids. We were kicking in doors, and I went to the end of a hallway, and I kicked in a door, and I walked in, and across the room there was a man, a priest, in front of an altar doing some type of sacrifice. And then I realized I can't move. I look down, and I'm in a circle of blood. I'm paralyzed. I cannot move. This priest, whatever, he finishes what he's doing. He walks by me, looks me in the eye, walks out a door. The soldier says, I have to kill him or something bad will happen. So now he can move. He walks out, he opens the door, and he says, freeze. The priest turns around, he reaches for something. The soldier shoots him. And he says, the moment I shot him, a black serpent came out of him and came in my chest. That's what's in me. And my friend looked at me and went, we can take care of that. So my friend put his hand on his shoulder, and he began to pray in the name of Jesus. And here's what my friend told me. He says, I didn't see, but I just sensed it's like an angel came into the room. He reached into that soldier's chest. The soldier saw it. He goes like terrified, reached in, pulled that serpent out and took it away. And the soldier says, that's it. That was in me. And then my friend led him to Christ, and he confessed Jesus as his Lord. And here's what, I'll be honest with you. I'm listening to him say this, and I went, really? That's weird. That's bless your heart, right. But something inside of me also said, Jim, pay attention, because this guy's not crazy. There's crazies. This guy's not crazy. He knows God's word. He loves Jesus. He has no reason to tell me that story, except God knew the reason. And then I started thinking and remembering the rest of the evening the stories of my missionary friends in Africa and Haiti. They're PhDs, they're MDs, they're doctors, they're educators, and they have similar stories. And they're not crazy. So this stuck with me. So we left the Capitol, and after that, I began to do some research on my own of some of the things that my friend had hinted at around our Capitol. Here's some of the things that I discovered. I discovered that since antiquity.
So Pastor Jim is going to go on to, in my opinion, blow the mind of his congregation, and good on him, because
right? And this is all going. Everything I'm about to say to you, if you don't believe me, please do, all right? But I learned this, all right? And this is all going somewhere, right? Our Capitol building in Denver is very similar to the Capitol building in DC, because at one time, Denver was to serve as a backup capital if the coast ever got attacked. I didn't know that, but you look at them going, that's very similar. I also learned that both buildings were built by builders associated with the Freemasons, the oldest fraternity in the world with a very sketchy spiritual practices. They claim to be non-religious, but when they read from the Bible, which they do quite often, they take out the word Jesus because they don't want to be characterized as a Christian organization. And here's where it gets weirder. I know there's kids in the room, but push through this, okay?
So remember that part where he talks about the Freemasons taking the word Jesus out of the Bible because they don't want to be characterized as a Christian organization. Now, I know it's easy, right? I paused it at 1 minute and 11 seconds too. That's awesome. Also, look, it's 10 minutes and 34 seconds long is the length of this clip. And 0 is a placeholder. So you could literally substitute 0 for any number. So if you wanted to put 2 there, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Either way, those are cool synchronicities. Now, taking Jesus out of the Bible not to be characterized, so as to not be characterized as a Christian organization, yes, 100%. Do the Freemasons have sketchy practices? And we're going to take a look at those here in a second. This might be old news to most of you, but nonetheless, we are in a spiritual war.
In front of both Capitol buildings is an obelisk, right? Washington Monument, right? A stone monument fashioned after, you ready for this? An ancient pagan statue, which according to Egyptian pagan religion is a symbolic of the missing penis of the Egyptian god Osiris, who was cut up and thrown in the Nile River. His wife, Isis, recovered everything except his genitals, so she replaced it with a rock statue, the obelisk. So basically, it's a giant phallus, okay? All right? Ask your mom what that is in the car, kids. All right, so beneath the statue, the Masons have also placed a symbolic seed or testicle. Now, the dome, all right, of both the Capitol building, both Capitol buildings, faces the obelisk, and these structures are all over the world, all right? Faces the obelisk and is architecturally called the uterus of Isis, Osiris's wife, the dome representing a pregnant Isis. In a special ceremony, this is what the Egyptians did. In a special ceremony, the seed of Osiris, who was dead, was called up from the land of the dead and impregnated Isis with the reincarnated Osiris in the form of her son Horus. Now here's where it gets weirder and why these two symbols are present today. On election day, back in Egypt, but on election day in both Washington and Denver, at the local Masonic temple, a worship service is held asking that the seed, this is modern day, the seed of Osiris to magically, demonically come up from the realm of the dead through the giant obelisk phallic symbol and impregnate through the womb of Isis, the reincarnation of Osiris, the dead god, to empower the sitting governor or president. And all of this is symbolic of the ultimate prophecy found in Revelation 17 and 20, where Osiris, there he's called Magog, are closely tied and represent the coming of the Antichrist. Now, if you were to study how these ancient gods, Osiris and Isis, were worshipped, there were two primary ways that you worship these two gods: sexual immorality,
Of all
and
kinds.
the sacrifice and murder of children and babies.
Sacrifice and murder of babies.
You gotta think about this. When the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, Pharaoh murdered all the babies 2 years and younger. Why? Because of this. When Israel moved into the promised land, within 3 generations, they had erected an obelisk and were sacrificing their babies by crushing their heads on the rocks and throwing them into fires to Osiris. When King Herod wanted to kill baby Jesus, he executed all the babies under 2 years old. Now, one more addition to the story, which is probably going to get me in trouble. This is where the black suburbans are going to pull up, right? But if you were, you don't do it right now, okay, but do it when you get home. If you were to Google modern artwork hanging in Governor Jared Polis's office, you will find a collection of modern art, but they are pictures of demons. And the artist is into the occult, hanging on his office wall. You can see them for yourself online, right? So here was my, please don't leave, you got to stay to the end, okay? Here was my attention-getting aha moment. I'm sitting at my kitchen table, and this one kind of came over me. I have a governor who wants to be president of the United States, who has pictures of demons hanging on his government office wall in a building that was designed by people who believe in awakening false gods from the realm of the dead. And at the inauguration, prayers are being offered in a local temple, asking a figure of the Antichrist to inhabit the ruler and give him power to rule in a state that is a destination location for full-term abortion in a country that now leads the world in child sex slavery and the consumption of child pornography. Maybe it's all a coincidence. I believe there's more going on. I think it's demonic intentionality. And I'm just going to tell you, keep your email, your separation of church and state to yourself. This is not a simple government political issue. There is a spiritual warfare battle. And I know through Jesus, we win in the end, but we are losing right now. Our children we're losing because Christians, we're not paying attention. We got to wake up.
We got to wake up. Now, Pastor Jim, in that, I'm going to check out his sermon for today. I haven't seen it yet. Says, we're losing right now. Well, it definitely seems that way if you are not a part of the truth community. We have been tracking these moves and counter moves for quite some time now, and we have seen the larger battle, if you will, from the 10,000-foot view. And we've seen the good make huge gains for the hearts and souls of humanity. That being said, doesn't mean that these individuals grasping for power are going to stop trying. And it doesn't mean that we can sit back. Like, we're not sitting back. We're out there doing things. But what is the source of we being in this place where we, the individuals that the founding fathers endowed, like they didn't endow it, but they rightfully identified that God had endowed the sovereignty of the nation state within the citizens of that nation state, and then they pinned those spiritual truths to paper. This was called the period of enlightenment when they did this. Well, there was another period of enlightenment before that, and another period of enlightenment before that, and on and on and on. Jesus's life represents a period of enlightenment. For Jesus said, I am the truth, the life, and the way. None come unto the Father save through me. And that was probably the most divisive thing that Jesus could have ever said. Nonetheless, here we are in 2023, looking back in history, using the name of Jesus. And yes, there is power in that. But who are these forces, these powers, and these principalities that are moving these massive trains of migrants up into the United States? A foreign invasion. It's an invasion. What is back of that? What is back of us being asleep to the reality that this has been going on for so long and forever? In my opinion, in my study, it's a lack of empowerment of the individuals. How do you take away the power of people? You tell them there's something that only one person can do, and that while you're here and alive, you are helpless. You're a sinner. That right in and of itself, that message coming from a man in decked out robes, standing behind a pulpit inside of a massive building, that would have an awe effect on your consciousness. That would have an appeal to authority effect on your consciousness. That would put you back on your heels a little bit, right? You're running around as a child, you're frolicking, you're having fun, you're empowered. You are empowered to live in joy. But then you get a little bit older, and the powers and the principalities, whether that's family, culture, or institutions, start to tell you things about yourself that make you start to believe less in your abilities. You gotta go do these things in order to have these things. You've got to believe in this way. You've got to think along these lines. You've got to come to these places at these times to do these things. Otherwise, it's the worst possible outcome you could imagine for yourself. That has an incredibly detrimental effect on your consciousness. Meanwhile, you've got people running around behind the scenes of those institutions, just like pigs in shit, frolicking, playing, doing whatever they want, and feeling very empowered because they are doing so. These are the institutions that make up the courts. These are the institutions that make up the governments. These are the institutions that make up the church. The big church, not small little individual churches, not Flatiron's church being led by Pastor Jim, but the one world government that was established long before the United States of America experiment began. A lot of us tend to forget that. Better said, the fact that we don't think about it is a testament to the powers and the principalities and their ability to persuade and influence and manipulate. But the church, quote unquote, operating out of Vatican was the end all be all authority on world events for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years. The Pope never even set foot in Portugal. He was in a boat off the coast and he said, "Ominous Dominus, this tract of land is Portugal now. The rest of that land is Spain." That's power, my friends. The Bible was not allowed to be distributed in any home native language, only Latin for hundreds of years. That's censorship. That's power. How does that comport with a Christ walking the face of the earth, healing the blind, and feeding the attentive masses? Those are not at all compatible. This portion of land belongs to these people, and this portion of land belongs to that kingdom. And the book that contains supposedly the way unto heaven is not allowed to be translated in any other text. It will only be in our native tongue, only ours. How is that in keeping with what happened with the apostles, who were given the gift of speech in all of the languages of the world and then told to go make multitudes of the nations of earth, go make disciples of the nations of earth? There's a clear distinction between the way that Christ lived and taught and the way his apostles then moved out into the world, and then the way that the church the big C, the big capital C, the institution of the church operated. And it wasn't even until 300 years after Christ was no longer walking the face of the earth in the physical flesh. At least we're told that much. It wasn't until 300 years until after his crucifixion that they decided to sit down and put together any type of a book that talked about his life and his teachings. It's been only 200 and a handful of years since our founding fathers penned the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And look how far society has gotten away from the ideals pinned therein. If they would usurp the power and the sovereignty of the United States citizen with strokes of pens and then lead that nation into the place that we find ourselves, where men have been beaten down by feminism, where everybody is in debt, where the currency is fiat and completely valueless on an objective world scale, and women are grafting skin from their ass to create a dick, and vice versa. Why wouldn't they have done that in the past to the doctrine, quote unquote, put down during Christ's period of enlightenment? They did not get the idea that they did not concoct the scheme and the plan that completely usurped the United States constitutional republic and the sovereignty of its citizens in 1876. They had a blueprint already completely mapped out. These individuals do not play games unless they know that they're going to win. There's a Roman, it was in the Byzantine, it was in Constantinople. But the Byzantines knew how to destroy every single nation on earth. They have this book. The name is escaping me off the top of my head, but they had a book. It was like an art of war manual on how to destroy every tribal peoples within Europe through manipulating their psychology and their superstitions and their spiritualities, and then the last step, beheading them. They knew all of this because they studied and they just played the long game. 300 years after Christ's crucifixion, they decide to get together to put together a book about his life based on the writings of the people that were there around him at the time. How much manipulation to the message has happened in 300 years of the game of telephone? All of the manipulation. That's the answer. And then you get to year 300, and we saw it with the FBI documents, with the shit the FBI pulled on Trump by just changing one word from like does to doesn't. You change the entire intentionality, tenor, and meaning of a legal document. He does have weapons of mass destruction. Just change that. He doesn't have weapons of mass destruction. I guarantee that the original documents that were drafted about invading Iraq said he doesn't have weapons of mass destruction. And then Colin Powell goes, just add an NT to the end of that little staffer guy. And then whoop! You get the world that I was born into, the lie that I was born into, and the manipulation of my patriotism and my love of country that saw me put myself through the hell of Marine Corps everything to go to a fucking sandbox to kill people that didn't do a fucking thing to us. Because you change one word. Did you know that all over South America, I spent 9 months there living with monks and nuns. Did you know that the majority of the crucifixes in South America show Jesus with like eyes of fire? Like they put rubies in his eyes, and he is staring straight out. He's got his arms out and he is staring straight ahead. You can't beat me. Nail me to this cross, the fuck? I will raise this body up. You ain't shit. Fast forward to today, and what type of a crucifix do we have? Well, I know very well because my father was a Catholic. My brother and I both got crucifixes that were on his casket after his funeral. And you've got a slumped over, pathetic ass looking character. Someone that looks defeated. Why would there be a Jesus with eyes straight out, looking straight ahead, like, fuck you, death? I'm coming for you. And then here in the United States, the supposed Christian nation, you've got the majority of the crucifixes looking like, damn, I just got my ass beat. Because you change the word does to doesn't. Because you manipulate and co-opt for your malevolent means, symbols, to affect the psychology of the masses that you know are hungry for a favorite football team. My football team is better than your football team. Well, we know human beings they are like that. Because we've been studying them since forever. My gladiator is better than your gladiator. My knight jousting is better than your knight jousting. We root for this town. No, this town is better. No, my religion is better than yours. And I'm going to be so passionate about that as to make it my being good. That's exactly what we want you to do. Now look at this symbol. Not empowering. Not encouraging. Not at all. And yeah, of course, we get the story of rising up from the dead. Yes, we do get that story. 100%. We get the full arc of the hero's journey. But why not depict Christ as staring straight out, empowered on the crucifix? Why not talk about Christ exclusively rather than Jesus? Verily I say unto thee, whomever believe in me, these works that I do, not only shall you do them, but greater. For I go unto my Father, Mother, God. No, Nate, church speaking, you're a sinner. And the only way that you can get anywhere is by believing in Jesus. Jesus, You're going to do greater works than me. Don't fucking listen to them. Church. Nate, we've got these big buildings. We've got all the gold. We've got the fancy robes. We've got the services on Sunday. Who are you gonna trust? Someone that's right before you with all of this opulence? Or a historical figure? This is their logic train. I'm going to believe in Christ. I'm going to believe what Christ told me. That not only these works that you've seen me do, you will do, and greater. That's empowerment. That's a message of enlightenment versus a message of dependence. And you get that state of dependence, that lulled to sleep, sheepish state by playing the long game, by setting up a my football team is better than your football team dichotomy. But then the football team that you're rooting for has all this symbology wrapped around it that's like, yeah, it's not so empowering. Why? Like, have you ever wanted to build anything? Have you ever tried to build anything? I built a fence. If I was to just sit there, right, and believe that the fence would erect itself, it would never happen. But if I go build the fence, it's going to take time. It's going to take time. It's going to take energy, but it will be built. It'll be built in the image that I conceive. Christ told us, not only these works, but more shall thee do them. And I see, hey, Defun, good to see you. Pride. Pride in what? Pride would be if I had already done something that I could be like, I'm the shit because I've done this thing. Pride doesn't factor into this. It's faith, it's trust, it's belief, it's knowingness, it's satori. If Christ told his disciples that not only these works shall thee do, but greater. And then his disciples did go and do those things. Are his disciples prideful? Or did they attain their powers and their abilities by being prideful of the fact that they were the disciples of Jesus? Absolutely not. It came on to them because there's something back of Jesus. There's something that is the creative, empowering force, responsible for the miracles, responsible for the teachings, responsible for the love. Let's take a look here.
In some ways to them. So, I do understand it and I do get it, but they think if we honor the term Christ consciousness, we're honoring the other things affiliated, such as New Age consciousness, metaphysics. And so that's just a little bit too far out for them. So, it's, to me, this is all very interesting because if you really think about it, religions are founded more on individuals, the personalities, the people, and or on one side, and or the dogmas and the doctrines, right? That's what a religion's going to be about. Usually an individual, whether it's Moses, Muhammad, Jesus, whomever, an individual, and then dogmas and doctrines that come up around that. Christ consciousness focuses here on the consciousness in and beneath everything else. That's which is within Moses, Jesus, and whomever. So even in Christianity, I'm not being sacrilegious to say it's not about Jesus. It's about the consciousness he attained. The man got crucified and died. If we only focused on the man, then whatever I'm following still knows death, which means you're also, mortality, limitation. What he did was resurrect himself to prove that there's a consciousness beyond the limits of the body. Go access the consciousness. And that's why I've always loved that. Go for the gusto, man. Go all the way. Go to center rather than frivolous things out here, which, does upset some people because that's where their focus is. So
we talked about, I want to say 2 streams ago, external locus of control versus internal locus of control. And this is something that the deep state knows all too well. They know exactly what people will do. People will focus outside of themselves. They'll look to their environment. They'll look to culture. They'll look to entertainment for a sense of identity, for a sense of direction. And if you just step in and provide it, but it's the direction that benefits you, the deep state, the institutions, materialistically and spiritually, because this is a spiritual war, then you're going to achieve a great effect. You're going to get a lot of people moving in a direction that may not necessarily benefit them, but it benefits you. And what are we talking about here? Like, what type of energy, right, are we talking about here? Well, earlier on in the stream, we heard the word masons. Now, masons built things. They built things out of stone. Because they did that, they were privy to, they amassed a lot of wealth. They were able to hear secrets. They became a powerful organization. But there's 2 sides to every coin. You've got individuals like Christ who are here to do God's work that's going to benefit humanity in the long run. And then you've got individuals that are going to get jealous of that. And they're going to try to tear it down through the crab bucket effect or the tall poppy syndrome. Then we have this biblical story of Cain and Abel. Cain's jealous of his brother, so he murders him. The priests were jealous. The Egyptian priests were jealous of the first Egyptian pharaoh, King Akhenaten. So they murdered him. They dismembered him. It's the same story as Osiris. They dismembered King Akhenaten. And then they put him in a sarcophagus and cemented it shut. And he rose the body up from the dead. Because he wasn't bound by the limitations of the flesh. King Akhenaten was on earth establishing the Egyptian religion around Ra, the sun god, for one reason and one reason alone: to take humanity from this external locus of control place where in ancient Egypt, before King Akhenaten, there was 52 gods. Thou shalt have no gods before me. There were 52 gods before King Akhenaten comes along. And he goes, no, do away with all of those gods. There is only one God. And if you need a symbol to help you concentrate on this truth, well, there's the sun. And the sun is the only thing that provides life to this planet and all the vegetation that you see and us. Without the sun, you have nothing down here. Jesus says, I'm the Son of God. Without me, Christ says, without me, you don't have anything. You don't have access to the Father. King Akhenaten says, without the sun, we don't have life on earth. So he does away with all 52 gods. He tells the military of Egypt, which was very conquistadorian at the time, very pre-Roman, very conquer territory oriented. Hey, Don't attack anybody unless they attack you. Stay within our borders. Our kingdom is big enough. Don't attack anybody unless they attack you. Right? Jesus Christ tells Peter, whomever lives by the sword dies by the sword. Don't draw your sword. Do not kill the legionnaire. Let them take me. It's fine. Don't attack. Restrain. Turn the other cheek. King Akhenaten says, hey, all you artists that are painting all these abstract images of ducks and birds, and you're drawing them in ways that do not reflect reality. Like what you just painted over there doesn't look anything like that duck. Even though you tell me that's a duck, that's not what a duck looks like. So if you're going to paint anything, this is King Akhenaten issuing royal decrees unto Egypt. If you're going to paint anything, paint it accurately. And that's a law now. And then the most controversial act that he did was he said, and nobody can wear clothes anymore because clothes help this hierarchy system that's creating this elite class rule over this peasant class. And so no more, none of that. Everybody's going to be naked from now on. You're all one. You're all equal. You're all on the same playing field. And the priests who were profiting royally from there being 52 gods, and they had temples all throughout Egypt of all these various gods, temple to this god, temple to that god, temple, everywhere a temple. You get a temple, you get a temple, you get a temple. Now, there's one God. So the priests are like, bro, I was taking a shit ton of money in from all these people that were coming to worship God 45, God 31, God 27. And you just put an end to that. And Akhenaten's like, yeah, because there's only one God. And y'all are just profiting off of people by telling them these lies. The military, bro, we were making a shit ton of money, all this booty, conquering all these territories. Yeah, but you're murdering in order to do that. All the wealth that you're bringing back to our kingdom is stained in the blood of innocence. That has a negative effect on our kingdom. You wait and see. We're going to have to reap what we sow. Military, priest class of ancient Egypt say, King Akhenaten, you got to go, bro. And they cut him up into 300 different pieces. They put those pieces in a concrete sarcophagus, and they freaking entomb him. And then he raises himself up from the dead. And his wife, I might be historically inaccurate on this one, but I'm very confident that it was Nefertiti. So we're in a spiritual war. And we keep getting these reiterations of a man and a woman, and the man doing amazing things to lead people into God, and then having a focal point of love in the world to keep him kind of grounded, to act as home base, if you will. And there's a wonderful book, and God, I hope you read it sometime, or I hope you've read it already, but it's The 9 Faces of Christ by Eugene Whitworth. This is a thick book, right? I've read this thing cover to cover in like no time at all, a month, and it's a thick book. And I've got other thick books, right? And some of them, they're not page turners, and you got to put them down. But The 9 Faces of Christ, The Quest of the True Initiate, when you get an enlightened text in front of you, you're just like, ba-boom! You can't help but go just deep in there and just read that freaking thing, man. You can't help but do that. And we've got the story of Mary sitting in front of Jesus with the disciples being enraptured to his teachings. And her sister being like, Jesus, can you get up and tell her to help me with all of these materialistic, mundane tasks? And Jesus is like, well, what is she supposed to be doing? Well, she's supposed to be helping me serve the food, helping me bring the water, bring the wine, make sure that everybody's comfortable and well looked after. And Jesus goes, She is doing the most important thing, the most high thing right now. God is here. She's enraptured. She's in joy. Children know when holiness is present. Animals know when holiness is present. Go look up these images of these girls that literally walk up to wild moose and hug them. If maybe with enough meditation beforehand, but like if your average human being tried to walk up to a wild moose and give it a hug, your average human being would be murdered, just mauled to death. And moose are taller than cars, so they're intimidating figures. But there's these images of these women and videos of these women. They look holier than all get out. And they approach these wild animals. And they do this with all types of different wild animals. Bears, freaking lions. And they bring these animals into a state of peace. Because an animal knows when it's loved. Like your domestic house cat and dog knows when it's loved. Versus like a dog, maybe your neighbor's dog or someone else's dog that like their owner is cruel to it. You always hear the owner like yelling, "Shut up, shut up." Like that energy that's coming out of that human, the dog understands that energy sucks. And so then the dog starts to reflect that energy back to the human. It's always rah, 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 yelling. And then maybe it bites the person that comes up to it, right? Just quick as a aside, I'm at a job, I'm walking it, taking photos. The house next door has like 5 dogs. 4 of the dogs, I was able to maintain a state of peace. 4 of the dogs are like, all right, maybe, yeah, all right, this guy's not too bad. They stop barking. One of the dogs damn near comes over the fence and scratches me like pretty damn bad. I hear the owner. This is the second time I've been there. I hear the owner just being like, "Shut up! Shut up!" Yelling. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense that that dog is acting that way. Mary knew that God was in the room. Mary was enraptured in the teachings that were coming from God. The same thing happens when you sit down in front of a holy text. Something that was penned from divinity. Something that was just divinely inspired. You cannot put it down. It just flows through you. You're just like, oh my God, spiritual food, manna from heaven. I'll tell you this much too. Never have been able to get that effect from the Bible. Never. I read it cover to cover in Afghanistan. Love a lot of it. Love Romans. I don't know. Really resonates with me. The New Testament, tons of good stuff. Definitely one of the most spiritual texts ever put out on the earth. But when society modern day 2023 starts telling us, what is a woman? No, men can give birth to women, or men can give birth to children. Something inside of you goes, you're full of shit. Like you just know. You have this visceral conscious reaction to like, that's a lie. Never have been able to sit down cover to cover with that book. Well, I mean, like in the way that I have been able to with these books. Yes, I've read it cover to cover. My point is, if it took them 300 years to sit down and compile the texts, and then they leave out the gospel of the person that spent the most time with Jesus, the person that Jesus referred to as wonderful, the one that he loved the most, the one that's seated at his right hand in the Last Supper. If the church gets together and leaves out the book that she wrote, the fuck I got use for that? Y'all gonna tell me that the book written by the person that spent the most time with Jesus and had quote unquote pillow talk, like the most intimate of talk that anybody could have with the guy, the historical figure that you tell me is the only thing, my only ticket into the promised land, you're going to leave out the book written by his wife? You are immediately discredited. Immediately discredited. You're going to leave out the book that Jesus used to teach from? The book of Enoch? You're going to leave that book out of the Bible? Discredited as an institution. Not the teachings therein, because there's tons of good teachings, right? Tons of truth. Probably, I love it when people are like, yeah, it's the most historically accurate document. I mean, the things that are in there, the predictions that they've made, percentage-wise, it's been the one that has come true the most. Yeah. Because an institution wanted those things to come true. So they planted the seeds in consciousness through the first iteration of Hollywood and the first iterations of televisions. Tell a vision, put the vision into the mind of the person, and then have them project it out, and then get a shit ton of people doing that, and then have the compound effect of that. You dramatically increase the likelihood of those situations happening. And all credit to the apostles who did the work of God once Jesus' crucifixion was over. But you leave out the book of Mary Magdalene, you leave out the book of Enoch. Bro, to me, logical, sane me, you don't win many points. And in fact, I can't trust you. Not only that, the only reason, we know this is historical fact, the only reason that anybody today calls Mary Magdalene a prostitute, and I'm not going to be able to remember the Pope's name off the top of my head. Oh, I just had it and I lost it. But because a Pope said so. Like 600 years later. It's no secret. We know that women have been hated on, to put it very, very lightly, for a very long time by institutions, right? And they've been used, and they've been abused, and they've been, just trafficked for sex as slaves. And you get to circa 2023, and there's never been a time period on Earth when there have been less slaves. We've got more people in indentured servitude right now in 2023 than in any other time in history. Why? Why would you leave out the gospel of Mary Magdalene? Because you know that the love that she put into her gospel. Go read it. You can read it. It's fully available today. It is one of the keystones of my personal history. Why leave those things out? Well, because you want to use and you want to abuse and you want to do what Cain did. Check out this badge. Looks like a sheriff's badge, right? Oh man, sorry, I gotta share the screen. Check out this badge. Looks like a sheriff's badge. What's it say on the very top? Cain's posse. What type of crown? What's on the crown? It says King, Director, CT, Chapter 6, ROJ. What's that stand for? It stands for the Royal Order of Jesters. And they call themselves Cain, in this chapter at least, Cain's posse. And that looks like a cretin of an entity, does it not? Check out the next one. Gordon Hoyt, director, 2003, chapter 84. There's the little Goyim. There he is again, too, with his little crown. The devil made me do it. Jester. Here's another one. Bob Johnson, director, chapter 45, 1998. You got this little Goyim king. Mirth is what it says across the top of his crown. It's got a full erection, and you've got a naked woman, and you've got a chalice. Cup of life, right? I spill out my blood. Whoever drinketh of this shall have eternal life. Symbology, co-opting symbols. The Royal Order of the Jesters. What were the Royal Order of the Jesters doing? Well, glad you asked. Check them out here. I'm gonna go there. Oh, where'd it go? Oh yeah, and then mine's on Rumble. That's right. Oh, I bet you I changed out of it, didn't I? Yeah, I did when I set up the stream. So really quickly, let's go to Rumble. Yeah, when I was setting up the stream, I probably used that tab to Royal Order of the Jesters. Royal Order of Jesters. Search. Royal Order of the Jesters. Look at this. Look at this symbology, right? You've got a dude engaging in bestiality. Now I'm going to get you to the right spot here.
Next, we shall hear a partial interview with two jesters who wish to remain anonymous. What did you see at the parties? Drinking, gambling, pigeon shoots, prostitution, sexual hazing? I could write pages on these subjects. Oral sex contests, high-stakes poker, lots and lots of drinking, porn movies running 24/7 in the hospitality room. What would you tell the other jesters if you could? Enough is enough. End this. We can have legal meetings without all of this. Quit lying to your wives and uphold your Masonic vows. A Mason is pledged to be a better man, not a drunk, gambling womanizer who's fooling the IRS. It's not the organization I thought it was when I joined. I thought it was for leaders in the shrine. I never visualized that things like this were going on because of our Masonic oath that says we're not to have intercourse with anyone but our wives, and that is what it boils down to. I thought it was an up-and-up organization, but I found out that it was not. Another interview with the wife of a jester is worth recounting. You are married to a member? Yes. How long? Married 35 years. Was there a pattern of behavior changes as your husband got more and more involved with the jesters? When he first got involved with the jesters, I thought it was the best thing for him. He met many, many men who became close friends. They have a saying, there are no strangers in the realm, just friends you haven't met. He maybe attended 2 books a year for the first 2 years, but by his 7th year, he had 14 trips planned. Finally, I said, enough. Where do I fit in anymore? Everything he did now was associated with the jesters. John would wear purple, carry purple emblemed golf bags, license plates, and boast about it being a strictly stag, luxury organization for no purpose other than to spread mirth. The more I heard that, the more disgusted I became. I also noticed that he was not taking cell phone calls in front of me, or he would go outside to talk. He used to let me answer his phone. I had heard about the girls by accident, about the 2nd year that John was in. He certainly played it down, and told me he had nothing to do with them. They were kept separate, no contact at all. I believed him. I didn't ask any more questions. The jester's oath is, what you hear here, what you see here, stays here when you leave here. Every new member must take that oath. He was a bit open with me about some of the things that went on. I guess telling me just enough not to arouse any suspicions, so I definitely discovered our problem after a specific incident. Would you please describe that incident? He was at his quartz book, when I received a phone message. Hi, John. This is Jane from St. Louis. I'm at the airport and wonder if you're sending a jester to pick me up or if I should get the shuttle. Did you confront your husband? Yes. He explained to me how it works. The jesters have a pool of girls. Certain men have their favorites and make requests to have them at the books. It's up to each court's director to assign the job of inviting the girls, a number based upon the number of attendees. They also have a doctor who checks the girls' papers. From what you found, please describe what goes on at these jester functions. Other than girls, there's a lot of high-stakes poker, low-stakes gin, and 24-hour hospitality rooms. The initiation involves stunts, which I know include nudity, but I don't know much about it. John says they don't involve the girls anymore. They also provide sightseeing, golf, etc. There's a lot of good stuff going on. They end with a black tie royal feast on Saturday night. Now there is an edict from Jester headquarters that no girls may be at any of the books. The guys were sweating it out, not only that the wives would find out, but also the authorities. Is this true? Have the Jesters cleaned up their act? Perhaps a bit. In August 2008, a directive was sent out to all local chapters, forbidding the following conduct during initiation ceremonies. Any type of physical brutality, such as whipping, beating, striking, branding, electronic shocking, or placing of a harmful substance on the body. Also included were sleep deprivation, exposure to the elements, confinement to small spaces, or other activities subjecting jesters to an unreasonable risk of harm. Although the jesters claim they were just trying to cover their billiken with this directive, such hazing is hardly unknown to the shrine. A lawsuit from 1989 revealing that electrified mats and benches were still employed, in some temples at least. But what of the girls? After all, it's not like the feds suddenly found out about this in 2008. They've known all about it since at least 1989, if not before, so they're clearly not after the jesters. Judge Tills and the others simply happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Nonetheless, it sent shockwaves throughout the organization. At the National Book...
That pin right there just deserves a second here. What's it say? A good drink and a little pussy. What else is there? The Royal Order of the Jesters, ladies and gentlemen. The Royal Order of the Jesters. Coming out of the Freemasons. The Freemasons. My grandfather was one. A fraternity of men, secret societies, originally supposed to be opportunities to hang out with other people who got it, quote unquote, got it. What is there to get? What is it that they got that the rest of humanity wasn't getting? Whoever believes in me and these works that I do, not only shall he do them, but greater, for I go unto my Father, Mother, God. Individuals who got it, that they were a spiritual being having a human experience, but it wasn't just this theoretical knowledge. It was, I am conscious, I am aware of what is flowing through me, being so much bigger than me and connecting back to something so much larger than I can possibly even imagine. And it fills me with such joy. It fills me with such gratitude. It fills me with such peace. Verily I say unto thee, from Jesus, my peace I give unto thee. Meaning that the same exact Jesus, in modern parlance, the same exact peace that I'm experiencing right now, you will experience it also. Give it time. Or just, it's here right now. You already are it right now. You already are this peace. You just don't know it yet. Nate, blasphemy, what the heck, this, that, and the other thing. Huh? How many of us have how many of us lost friends and family members when we were telling them that the government was acting against us? That we, the awake, represent a resistance to tyranny. Oh, bro, that's conspiracy theories. You know, that's what those conspiracy theorists say. Normies, right? A clear distinction between what's happening in the minds of a whole group of people and another group of people. All of us patriots, all of the patriots that physically fought in the Revolutionary War, they just understood and knew that Britain would murder all of them if they didn't fight back. And us patriots know that all of us are simultaneously under attack from so many different avenues and vectors of attack that it's what makes Dan Bongino experience an EMA, an early morning awakening. Same with me. When the Texas lawsuit failed, with all the other states signed on to it, dude, I was a wreck because I had this notion that something I thought existed, I had this realization that what I thought existed didn't exist. Not as I was raised to believe that it existed. Not the way that culture and society and entertainment told me it existed. Namely, that we have a right to petition our government for a redress of grievances. And then I see the bodies of people, states, petition the government for a redress of grievances. And then the court system tell them that legally, we can't even see you. Bro, y'all don't fucking exist up in here. You don't have standing. Did we not give birth to you? Did we, the states, not come before you, the federal government, and the judicial system? No, yeah, I mean, historically, yes, but within our corporation, within our operation that we're running here, we don't recognize you. We've got a legal system unto ourselves. So yeah, no redress of grievances today, y'all. We don't see you. Donald Trump, now out of office, 2021. Lawsuit against it was even before that. We don't recognize you. You don't have standing. Basically saying that, like, you're not on this boat with us. You're out to sea. But in reality, y'all are the slaves down below. Just row that bitch. And shut up. That same type of realization will become you around what is so eloquently and beautifully pinned in this book, The 9 Faces of Christ. And in this book, remember, be here now. Be here now. The same exact realizations that Jesus had during the years that are not recorded in the Bible. And they're not recorded in the Bible because if you knew all of the things that Jesus went through during those years, and all of the epiphanies that he had, and all of the realizations that led him to the place of where he could then come back to his homeland and say, I am the truth, the life, and the way. That thought never crossed his mind when he was 7. That thought never crossed his mind when he was 14. Never crossed his mind when he was 21. It didn't cross his mind until after he turned 30 to come back to his homeland and say those things to people, not just anyone either, to literally walk up like Martin Luther King Jr. on the steps of the Lincoln Monument. So in the seat of power of the region, Jerusalem, and declare in a synagogue, this prophecy has been fulfilled. I am that which you have prophesied to come. In front of the power brokers of the day. Took balls of steel, or, an incarnation of God. But nonetheless, walked right into the lion's den and said, I'm here. I am that I am. The truth, the life, and the way. None shall come to the Father save through me. And they're over there like, bro, ancient Egypt analogy. Don't tell people there's only one God and that he's here now. We can't have that. We have an institution to maintain here. We have money and taxes and tithes to collect here. We've got palaces to build, and then modern day, we've got yachts to float. And all the while, once people are kind of lulled back to sleep, they're laughing in our face, erecting institutions like this. A good drink and a little pussy. What else is there? The members of the Royal Order of Jesters are clergymen, judges, police chiefs, politicians. They're the power brokers of the day. And they're engaged in sexual immorality to the umpteenth. In this documentary, he details all kinds of perverse acts that they engage in. Oral sex competitions. Freaking just promiscuous sex left and right with prostitutes and whores and all kinds of other women. But then we're supposed to believe that there's been some kind of a crackdown on it? No, it just evolves. It just gets more profane. It gets more mapped onto society to the point where you've got God knows how many women right now participating in OnlyFans, selling their bodies online, being controlled by their supporters, by their sponsors, by their subscribers, telling them to do even more provocative and dangerous things for money, for a fiat currency issued by a Walmart, essentially a Federal Reserve that is not a federal body, that is not in keeping with the vision of the Founding Fathers. What have you done with all those women? You've just completely misdirected their entire life purpose because you set up a bunch of shiny objects and you got people to go chase it. Do we have any other historical examples of this? Well, there's these things called the Crusades. And you had a shit ton of people go murder a shit ton more of people because of a shiny object that an institution set up and then forced, in many cases, people to go and participate in, or created a ton of zealousy around in order to go do. And then we find ourselves in 2023 with all of these migrants invading like a plague. I'm not calling migrants a plague. I'm calling a foreign invasion a negative thing. I'm calling an invasion by foreign entities a negative thing. And why is all of this happening? Well, because maybe it's because the power brokers that operate behind the scenes belong to organizations that have pins like this. And then the spillover effect happens where you got most of men and women today, most young men and women today, who only want to be an influencer and who are willing to sell their body online in OnlyFans in order to get paid to do that, in order to get some money to be able to provide for their way of life. Where you've got less families ever being started than at any other time in history. There's a silver lining, folks. There is a great awakening happening. Pastor Jim is calling out the governor of Colorado for the satanic paintings on his wall. Whereas when I was living there back in 2014, going to church then, it was hands off. Politics? Nope. Didn't talk about that in church. This country was founded in churches. Yeah, the original meeting started in a bar, but the Green Dragon Tavern. But it was the pastors who were guiding the flock, leading the people of the United States. They completely broke away from the big institution of the church. They sailed all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to get away from their malevolent influence. To be like, all we want to do is set up a beautiful country, tend the land, and worship Christ. And they referred to Christ as Jesus, one and the same. We just want to make a really good geographic region on Earth, call it the United States of America eventually, and focus on being the best possible versions of ourselves that we can be. And that's my point. That's Jesus's point by telling people that whoever believe in him and these works that he's do, they shall do them and greater. It's why when Buddha was ready to consciously give up his body and ascend, that his final words were, do your best. Christ did his best. He became the ideal. Jesus became the ideal. And if you need anything as a visual to help you with an idea of this distinction that I'm talking about, I'm not detracting in any way, shape, or form from Jesus. Not at all. No way, no how. Would never even dream of doing that. On my way out, I'm going to share these two clips. Hopefully, my point will be more elucidated.
In one respect, they're the same. Kind of like problem, how the problem came about, there is a solution, and what is that solution, right? That's generally the four. One's a little bit more, sin. Accept Jesus as your personal savior. The Jesus that you're thinking of as a historic person, I want his consciousness, not his history. See, that's all it is. Look at the difference from the Christian to the Buddhist to the Christ consciousness. What did you see happen? There's an evolution. They're the same, but there's an evolution. And the one has a higher frequency. One is 3.5 higher. No, that's intellectual. The difference is what? It feels different. Right? Didn't it? Oh, so it didn't go sin and all. It went, we believe we're separate. Notice I said believe. I didn't say we are. We came to believe that we're separate, but we're not. Great news. Here is, in closing, here are a few quotes about Christ consciousness from various wonderful teachers. Paramahansa news. Here is, in closing, here are a few quotes about Christ consciousness from various wonderful teachers. Paramahansa Yogananda, it's the utmost importance to every person that he or she experienced the birth of the universal Christ. Ernest Holmes, to practice the presence of God is to awaken within us Christ consciousness. Christ is God in the soul of man. The resurrection of Christ is the death of the belief that we're separate from God. Peace Pilgrim, real Christians allow their lives to be governed by the indwelling Christ. There's, in the booklet, you'll see there's from St. Teresa of Avila, Course in Miracles, the Gita. When you move amidst the world of sense, free from attachment and aversion alike, there comes the peace in which all sorrows end, and you live in the wisdom of the real self, which is the Christ self. The Bible, in the beginning was the Word, which is the Christ, and the Word was God, with God, and the Word was God, which means we're synonymous with God. All things were created through this one. In this one, which is us, was life and light of humanity. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And Edgar Cayce, the time never was when there was not a Christ. We are the Christ. When it said nothing was created but through that one, we are the ones who made believe a world that superimposed itself, and impose is a good word for it, imposed itself over the reality of God. As the veils are lifted, we find freedom. How do we get there? Awaken Christ consciousness. The greatest tool to awaken, it's not a technique of meditation and so, it's forgiveness. Learning to say, I get that I'm not the highest frequency all the time. Instead of, I will make myself a 10 out of 10 on a frequency level. No. Be a 5 and say, isn't that funny that I'm really a 10 and I act like a 5? Wow. And guess what? I forgive myself for it. Talk to yourself the way you would a child that you love. Why aren't you a 10? I don't know, Mom, but I'm starting to have anxiety disorders. I don't know why. Be a 10. Be a 10 and not have them. Okay. You know, and then they're like, neurotic, and they've got, perfectionist problems. And God, look at the kids, man. Hey, how you feeling? Mom, I just don't always feel like this. 10. Cool. And what do you do with that? Well, I don't know. What should I do? Have fun. Own it. Give it to God. Yeah, but my friend said God gets mad at. No, God doesn't get mad. God says, I love you. Come home. You're a 1. You're a 5. Good. You're a 10. Great. God will not evaluate and say, you're a 10. You're a 1. God's just saying, I can't see any levels. You're holy. You just don't know it yet. You act like, think like a 1, a 5. All I could say as God is, why are you doing that? Why do you want to think that you're anything less than 10 and live the 10? Even if you're feeling a 1, you can live the 10 by saying, I own it. Today, I somehow got to this place of feeling like a 1, but I really am holy. Somewhere I can't see right now, there's a holiness. You slow down and you breathe and affirm it. I am the holiness, not the problem. And things will start changing. The neurons will begin to get unwired as they were rewired as they truly are.
What's going on?
The general's gone crazy. He's trying to force Aang into the Avatar state. Good bird horse thingy.
Maybe you can avoid me, but she can't.
I can't move. Don't hurt her.
Katara! No!
Stop this. You have to let her go.
You could save her if you were in the Avatar state.
I'm trying. Aang, I'm sinking.
I don't see
I'm
glowing.
a 1.
Please. You don't need to do this.
Apparently, I do.
I'm a sinner!
It worked! It worked!
Oh, Christ.
Avataring! Can you hear me? Your friend is safe! It was just a trick to trigger the Avatar state! And it worked!
With one word, Christ told Pilate, an army will invade. Let's go forth, bring forth the Christ in our own life, not in a theoretic way, but in a real way, and have that be the second coming of Christ through the body of we the people. Namaste.